She was wearing the red dress. You know the one. The one she only wore on nights she wanted to feel powerful, confident, sexy. It clung to her in all the ways that used to drive me insane in the best way. My fingers still remembered the curves beneath that silk, even if it had been months since I'd traced them. We were sitting in our favorite booth at Kazuki's, the tiny Japanese place tucked between a liquor store and a laundromat, our little hideaway from the world. Every anniversary, every birthday, every big celebration, it was always Kazuki's. The chef knew us by name. He'd even sent us a complimentary bottle of sake tonight, grinning like he was part of some inside joke. If only he knew. She set down her chopsticks, her lips still slick from the spicy tuna roll. Her eyes met mine, soft at the edges, but with something hard glittering underneath. I want to try something, she said, voice light as steam rising from miso. I smiled instinctively. You mean besides the tempura ice cream? No, her eyes didn't blink. I want to explore ethical non-monogamy. It was such a clinical phrase, dropped into the middle of dinner like a bloody knife on a tablecloth. Ethical non-monogamy. It felt like she'd practiced saying it in the mirror, pairing it with just the right head tilt, the right lipstick shade, the right timing between the eel and the bill. I paused with my beer halfway to my lips, then slowly set it down. I'm sorry. What? She leaned forward, elbows on the table, breast pushing softly against the red fabric. That red fucking dress. It's not about you, she said. It's about me. Us, actually. Growth. Freedom. Sexual exploration. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because I was bleeding and didn't want to show it. Since when do we need sexual freedom? She shrugged, casual like she was commenting on the weather. We're not dead, are we? We've been married for 8 years, and, well, I think it's mature to admit we want to try new things. That we might desire other people. Something inside me sank like a stone, slow and heavy. 8 years of monogamy, loyalty, and familiarity, all unraveling over dragon rolls and soft jazz. I forced a smile. So you've met someone? Her lips curved. Not a full smile, no teeth, but just enough. I didn't say that. But she didn't say she hadn't either. The waitress brought the check. My wife, ever efficient, slid her card in before I could reach for mine. Generous. Gracious. Like she hadn't just detonated the foundation of our marriage under a paper lantern. On the way to the car, she wrapped her arm around mine. Her skin smelled like that jasmine body oil I'd bought her last Christmas, the one she used for nights she wanted to feel delicious. I noticed the way her dress hitched slightly with every step, revealing just enough thigh to make heads turn as we passed. I was one of those heads. Still. Always. She drove home, insisted on it, actually. I stared out the window, watching the reflections of city lights smear across the windshield like paint on glass. My mind played a reel of memories I didn't ask for. Her laughter in bed, her sleeping beside me, the way she used to reach for me in the middle of the night just to feel my skin. Something had shifted. Maybe months ago. Maybe longer. As she talked about boundaries and honesty and consent, I nodded. But my mind wandered to her phone, always face down. Her new gym routine. The sudden lingerie purchases. The way her kisses lately tasted more like habit than hunger. She wanted to explore. That word stuck in my chest like a thorn. We got home. She stripped off her dress casually in the hallway, tossing it over the stair rail. No bra underneath. I caught the bare curve of her ass as she disappeared into the bathroom, humming some song I didn't recognize. I stood in the hallway, fists clenched in my pockets. Something told me this wasn't a suggestion. It was a declaration. I sat on the edge of our bed as the shower started. Steam curled from under the door. I could hear her faintly, laughing at something on her phone. The same phone she had cradled like a secret for weeks now. I imagined some name in her messages. Some faceless man with charming text and good lighting. Maybe someone she already fucked. Maybe someone she wanted to. In that moment, the humiliation turned to clarity. I was being replaced. Not fully, not officially. But slowly, emotionally. Like erosion. And the worst part? She'd packaged it in self-help vocabulary, as if it was spiritual, enlightened. She was fucking someone else, or about to, and I was supposed to call it evolved. I lay back on the bed, eyes on the ceiling fan. My mind spun just as fast. And beneath the ache, something sharp began to stir. Revenge? No, that was too simple. Strategy. I turned my head toward the bathroom door. Her silhouette moved behind the foggy glass, beautiful and familiar and suddenly not mine anymore. That's when I knew what I had to do. The game had started. I wasn't going to sit on the bench. The sound of her laughter echoed from the bathroom, bouncing off the tiles like it belonged in someone else's life. I stayed lying on the bed, motionless, eyes fixed on the ceiling as my wife sang softly over the hiss of the shower. Her phone sat on the dresser, just out of reach, charging, blinking with the occasional buzz that cut through the room like a pulse. Temptation. I didn't move for it. Not yet. Instead, I thought about Chloe. Chloe with her messy blonde hair and those horn-rimmed glasses she never needed. Chloe who rolled her eyes at office politics but always stayed late when I asked her to. Chloe, whose skirts were always just a little too short for HR but somehow never short enough to be an accident. And Chloe who, a few months ago, started looking at me differently. Not like I was her boss. Like I was a man. A man she noticed, even when I stopped noticing myself. I sat up and stared at my reflection in the mirror across from our bed. The man looking back at me had a 5 o'clock shadow and tired eyes, but he was still there. Still breathing. Still worth wanting. She thinks she's ahead of me, I thought. But I'm not out of moves. The shower stopped. I heard the curtain slide, then the quick shuffle of towels and water pattering onto the tiles. I turned just as she stepped out, wrapped in one towel, hair damp and dark around her shoulders. She looked radiant. Relaxed in that way people only look when they've already made their decision. She wasn't worried about whether I'd agree. She didn't need my permission. She thought she'd already won. "You okay?" she asked, drying her hair with the second towel. "Yeah," I said with a smile that felt like glass under my tongue. "Just thinking." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "About what?" "You. Us. All of this." I stood, stepped closer, and let my fingers graze the bare curve of her shoulder. "Maybe you're right. Maybe it's time we grew up." She smiled, real, bright, genuine. "I knew you'd understand. It doesn't have to be scary, you know. Some couples find it strengthens their relationship." Strengthens. Jesus. "I trust you," she added. "You shouldn't," I wanted to say. Not anymore. But I only kissed her temple and murmured, "We'll talk more in the morning." She nodded, satisfied, and crawled into bed like she hadn't just cracked our foundation and called it self-actualization. That night, she slept deeply, turned away from me, her phone cradled under her pillow like a lover. I stared at the back of her head, listening to her breathe, and counted the seconds between the buzzes. 4 vibrations in 2 hours. Maybe more. I stopped keeping track. When her breathing finally dipped into that slow, heavy rhythm of deep sleep, I got out of bed and slipped into the office. Quiet as a confession. I opened my laptop and sent one message to Chloe. "Can you keep a secret?" Her response came back faster than I expected. "Depends. Is it a good one or a bad one?" I smirked. "That depends on whether you're free this weekend." The typing dots appeared, stopped, reappeared. "You're not inviting me to a spreadsheet convention, are you?" "No spreadsheets. Napa. Just us. Business retreat." "Business retreat?" "I didn't know we were launching a startup. Call it vision planning. I'll handle the details." She didn't answer right away. Then, "Okay, but you owe me wine. And answers. You'll get both. See you Friday." I closed the laptop and leaned back in the chair, the faintest hint of adrenaline humming in my blood. This wasn't just revenge. This was clarity. She wanted freedom? So would I. But I wasn't going to trip over my pride or spill my heart at her feet. I'd play this game her way. Smiling, nodding, showing maturity. And then I'd rewrite the rules. The next morning, she was all soft touches and coffee in bed. Like she was still the woman who used to leave notes in my work briefcase. She kissed me on the cheek before I left for the office, told me she had a massage booked for the afternoon, then maybe a drink with friends. She didn't specify who. She never did anymore. At work, I told Chloe to clear her weekend. I had the perfect excuse, the Q3 planning session that had been postponed twice. I framed it as a creative reset, a weekend of strategy and off-the-clock problem-solving. She raised an eyebrow. "You're telling me you want to take me to wine country and talk about revenue projections?" "Among other things," I said. I could feel it then, something different in her posture. Interest, not just curiosity. That flicker of something that had been simmering for months. Chloe wasn't just bright and beautiful. She looked at me like I still had weight. Like I wasn't something old and settled. Like I hadn't already been benched by the one woman I thought I'd spend forever with. When she left my office that afternoon, I watched the sway of her hips beneath that tight skirt and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Control. I spent the rest of the day making reservations. A boutique winery in Napa that offered private tastings. A cozy inn with a view of the valley. A table for 2 at a restaurant that didn't ask questions when you requested the corner booth with the best privacy. I even rented a convertible. Chloe deserved more than a spreadsheet session. She deserved a weekend escape. And so did I. That night, my wife was all roses and soft jazz again. She asked if I'd thought more about her proposal. I nodded, told her I wanted to take some time to reflect, to process. I appreciate that, she said, touching my arm. This could be so good for us. You'll see. I smiled. Oh, I will. She showed up in a white sundress. God help me. It was simple but devastating, tight at the waist, flowing at the thighs, the neckline hinting at more than it revealed. Chloe had always been beautiful in an understated way, but this was deliberate. And if it wasn't for me, then it was for the version of me she wanted to imagine. A version who hadn't been sleeping next to a ghost in red silk. You look. I stopped myself before I could say something I couldn't take back. She smiled anyway, I scanning the convertible I'd rented. You really weren't kidding about this retreat, huh? I helped her toss her bag into the trunk. Napa doesn't tolerate half measures. Neither do I, she said, and then slid into the passenger seat without waiting for me to open the door. The drive up was light at first. Music low. The kind of conversation that bounces between safe topics, favorite wine varietals, weird corporate retreats, bad Tinder stories. She told me about a date who brought his mother to the second outing. I told her about the time my wife and I got lost on the Silverado Trail and ended up in a vineyard run by monks. Well, Chloe said, sipping from her iced coffee, at least she didn't bring her mother on your second date. We both laughed, but there was a tension building beneath it. A kind of unspoken curiosity that hovered in the spaces between questions. It wasn't until we crossed into Napa proper, when the air got warmer and the vineyards spread out like green lace across the hills, that the mood started to shift. I caught her watching me as I drove. Not subtly, either. You're different today, she said. Different how? You're not distant. I gripped the wheel tighter. Would you prefer me distant? No, she said, voice lower now. I like this version of you. Present. Confident. Confident. That word sank into me like a warm stone. I needed this, I admitted, to get out of the noise. Is that what this is about? She asked. Escaping. I hesitated. Partly. But also clarity. She leaned back, one hand slipping behind her neck, eyes hidden behind those oversized sunglasses. Then let's be clear. We reached the inn just afternoon. Tucked behind a line of olive trees and wildflowers, the place looked like something out of a painting, rustic but modern, quiet but far from modest. The kind of place built for secrets. Our rooms were next to each other, not adjoining. Close enough to knock, not close enough to pretend. We checked in, dropped our bags, and regrouped on the porch 30 minutes later. Chloe had changed into a silky blouse, half tucked into shorts that showed off endless legs. She wore perfume, just enough to make me turn my head when she passed. Ready for wine and lies? She teased. Always, I replied. We spent the afternoon at 2 vineyards. Laughing, tasting, talking about nothing and everything. The buzz hit her halfway through the second flight, a light, careless kind of drunk that made her laugh louder, talk faster, and bump her knee against mine when we sat too close. So, let me get this straight, she said, swirling her Pinot. Your wife suggested an open marriage over sushi? I stared into my glass. Spicy tuna and betrayal. Hell of a combo. She really said it was the mature thing to do? She framed it like it was evolved. Enlightened. Chloe scoffed. Funny how enlightenment always seems to involve one person getting exactly what they want. I glanced at her. What about you? What about me? You've never wanted more? She paused. Something flickered behind her smile. I've had thoughts about people I shouldn't want. Times I've wondered what would happen if I crossed a line. But I usually stop myself. Usually. She held my gaze for a second too long. Let's just say I'm not always a saint. The words hung there. Heavy. Loaded. Real. Dinner was a blur of soft light, good food, and sexual tension so thick I could have carved it with my steak knife. We sat across from each other on the outdoor patio, string lights glowing overhead. Her ankle touched mine beneath the table and didn't move. You still haven't told me the real reason we're here, she said. Isn't it obvious? Not yet, she said, voice low, inviting. We didn't speak for a few seconds. Just sipped wine and stared. When we got back to the inn, she stopped at her door, fingers on the handle. Thanks for today, she said. It was unexpected. I nodded. You deserved it. She hesitated. Her body leaned slightly toward mine, just enough to make it clear that if I kissed her, she wouldn't stop me. Instead, I stepped back. Not tonight. She blinked, a flash of surprise crossing her face before she nodded slowly. Good night, Boss. Good night, Chloe. The door clicked shut behind her, and I stood there for a few seconds, heart racing. The moment had been there, laid out between us like a final offer. But I didn't take it. Not yet. Because this wasn't about rushing. This was about remembering who I was. And making her remember, too. The next morning started with silence and sunlight. Napa mornings had that kind of deceptive peace. Still air, birdsong in the distance, soft rustle of wind through olive trees. I sat on the back porch of the inn, coffee in hand, watching the steam curl up and disappear into the golden sky. I hadn't slept much. My body had stayed in bed, but my mind had been wide awake, replaying Chloe's laugh, the press of her knee against mine under the restaurant table, that single moment outside her door where she leaned in, and I didn't take the bait. I don't know if I regretted not kissing her, but I thought about it all night. At around 8 a.m., her door opened. She stepped outside with messy hair and oversized sunglasses, a hoodie over a tank top, bare legs peeking out from sleep shorts. The morning version of her looked more intimate than anything she'd worn the day before. And she knew it. Morning, she said, voice husky from sleep. You're up early. Couldn't sleep. She sat beside me, tucking one leg under the other. Too much wine or too much thinking? A little of both. She sipped the coffee I'd poured for her. Did I make things weird? No, I said immediately. Not weird. She glanced at me. Just charged. I smiled. Yeah, that's fair. The silence stretched, not awkward, just heavy. Finally, she spoke. You know, she began, tracing the rim of her mug with her fingertip. I used to wonder why you stayed married. I raised an eyebrow. I mean, I never wanted to cross any lines or even ask. But it was always obvious something was off. She never called, never visited. And the few times I saw her, she barely looked at you. I didn't answer. I just stared into the coffee, suddenly unsure how to explain 17 years of erosion in one clean sentence. Chloe continued. I guess I thought you were just the type who doesn't give up. Loyal, even when it hurts. I used to think loyalty meant staying no matter what, I said. But maybe it just means not betraying yourself. She looked at me for a long time. That's the version of you I like. We spent the day touring vineyards, hopping from one sun-drenched tasting room to the next. By the third stop, we were tipsy enough to start talking about more than wine. So she said, lazily spinning her rose. How long have you known? That she was already seeing someone? She nodded. A while. Maybe I didn't want to know. But once you hear the word non-monogamy, you start looking for things. And they're everywhere. Chloe shook her head. She doesn't deserve you. You don't even know me that well, I replied. She tilted her head. Maybe I do. There was a breeze blowing off the hillside, and it carried her scent toward me, something floral and sweet with a hint of her skin underneath. She leaned forward, arms resting on the table between us. You know the first thing I noticed about you? She asked. What? You never talked about yourself. Not in a sad, mysterious way. Just, you were always focused on everyone else. Clients. Staff. Even your wife when you mentioned her. I shrugged. She was my priority. Chloe's eyes narrowed slightly. Was. She didn't ask anything more. She didn't need to. That night, after a quiet dinner and too much Syrah, we walked the trail behind the inn. The moon was low, silver against the wine-dark hills. We walked in silence for a while until the trail narrowed and I stopped. She turned to face me. Are you going to kiss me now? There was a trace of defiance in her voice, like she was daring me to prove something, maybe to her, maybe to myself. I stepped forward, closed the gap between us. She smelled like wine and warm skin, and I didn't think. I just kissed her. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't frantic. It was the kind of kiss you lean into after months of quiet tension. Her fingers curled into my shirt. Mine found the bare skin at her waist beneath the hem of her hoodie. She gasped softly when my hand slid up, grazing the curve of her ribs, her breath catching in my mouth. She pulled back slightly, lips still brushing mine. We can stop. I looked her in the eyes, searching for any hesitation. There wasn't any. I don't want to. She nodded once, then took my hand and led me back toward the inn. We didn't speak as we walked through the lobby. No need to explain anything to anyone. She unlocked her door, stepped inside, and waited. I followed. But that story, the real moment everything shifted, that came next. Her room smelled like her vanilla, wine, skin warmed by summer air. She dropped her hoodie onto the floor with one smooth motion. The tank top underneath was paper thin, and I could see the faint outline of her nipples pushing against the fabric. Her hair was wild, unbrushed since the vineyard breeze, and her lips were slightly swollen from the kiss we'd barely broken. She didn't ask if I was sure. She just stepped into me, her body aligning with mine like we were made for this moment. I kissed her again, harder this time, the kind of kiss that says we're done pretending. Her hand slid under my shirt, fingertips grazing my stomach, then pushing the fabric up over my chest. I pulled it off, letting it drop behind me as her mouth found my collarbone, my neck, my jaw. It wasn't rushed, but it wasn't slow either. We undressed each other in pieces, my belt, her shorts, my socks, her tank, until we stood there in just skin and what. I looked at her in the warm light of the bedside lamp, and she looked back at me with eyes that didn't ask questions. Just accepted. She climbed onto the bed first, stretching out with a soft sigh, her thighs parting just slightly in invitation. I joined her, crawling between them, propped on my forearms, our lips never far apart. "You okay?" I whispered, voice gravel and heat. She smiled. "Yeah, are you?" I didn't answer with words. I answered with my mouth. I kissed my way down her throat, her chest, her stomach, slow, reverent, and then lower. She gasped when I reached her, fingers tangling in the sheets, hips arching into me. Her thighs trembled against my shoulders, and she whispered my name like it meant something again. It had been so long since I felt this urgency, this desire for me. Not obligation, not scheduled marital routine, but hunger. Chloe moaned softly, her body reacting to every flick, every pressure, every pause. I took my time. I made her come with a kind of shuddering surprise, and when her body went slack beneath me, I kissed her inner thigh like a signature. Then she pulled me up, hard. Her lips crashed into mine with renewed urgency, her hands fumbling at my waistband. When I slid inside her, she gasped against my mouth, her nails digging into my back. It wasn't frantic. It was needed. She wrapped her legs around me, pulled me deeper, whispered things I barely heard. Things like, "God, yes," and "I've wanted this," and "You don't know what you do to me." We moved together like we'd been doing this for years, like our bodies already understood what our minds hadn't said yet. And when I finally came, it wasn't just orgasm. It was grief. It was relief wrapped in skin and breath, in sweat and sex, and the faint scent of lavender from her shampoo. It was everything I hadn't let myself feel in months, maybe years. I collapsed beside her, chest heaving, arm draped across her waist. For a while, neither of us said anything, just the sound of our breathing filling the silence. Then she turned to me, her fingers tracing circles on my chest. "So, what now?" I stared at the ceiling. "No, I don't know." She didn't push. She didn't pry. She just nestled against me, one leg thrown over mine. We drifted like that, half asleep, half reborn. Sometime in the middle of the night, I woke to the buzz of my phone on the nightstand. I turned it over. 5 texts from my wife. 1:18 a.m. "You still awake?" 1:21 a.m. "Just thinking about tonight." It's exciting, right? 1:34 a.m. "I met someone. Just a drink. Eli. Nothing serious. But, yeah." 1:48 a.m. "Hope you're open-minded. I really want this to work for us." 2:06 a.m. "Love you." I stared at the last message for a long time. Not out of sadness. Out of clarity. She wanted me to love her while she explored. Wanted me to wait patiently at home while she experimented with what being mature looked like in dimly lit bars with men named Eli. And yet, she had no idea I was here, tangled in bedsheets that still smelled like Chloe's perfume and my own sweat, while the moonlit silence between us felt more honest than the last year of my marriage. I didn't respond. I just turned off the phone. Then I turned back to Chloe, who stirred in her sleep and instinctively pressed closer to me, her bare skin warm against mine. And for the first time in months, maybe longer, I didn't feel hollow. I didn't feel betrayed. I felt free. I pulled into the driveway just after 6 on Sunday evening. The house looked the same, but it felt different. The roses she'd planted last spring were blooming wildly near the porch, and the porch light, usually off by sunset, was still glowing like she'd forgotten to turn it off, or like she was expecting someone. I cut the engine, grabbed my weekend bag, and sat there for a few seconds, staring at the front door. My phone buzzed again, another text from Chloe, just 3 words. "Miss you already." I didn't open the door right away. I just held the phone in my lap and let the message settle in me. I felt her all over, my skin, my clothes, my breath. And in some strange way, I still felt her in my chest, like a lingering pulse. I stepped inside the house and found her in the kitchen, barefoot in a thin robe, humming over a glass of wine. "Oh," she said, looking up. "You're back." No kiss. No welcome. Just a note of surprise, like she wasn't sure I would come back at all. Yeah, I said. Long drive. Bet it was worth it, she replied, not looking at me. Her lips curled into a half-smile as she took another sip of wine. I set my bag down by the stairs. You're in a good mood. She leaned against the counter. Why wouldn't I be? It's been an enlightening weekend. I waited. She didn't make me wait long. I met someone, she said casually. His name's Eli. She let the name hang in the air like perfume. Let me guess, I said. He's into polyamory, drum circles, and microdosing. She laughed. Actually, he owns a startup and drives a Tesla. But nice try. I opened the fridge, grabbed a bottle of water, and leaned against the opposite counter. The kitchen had never felt colder. The distance between us stretched like a canyon. You want to talk about it? I asked. I mean, isn't that the point? She said, her eyes locking onto mine. Radical honesty, open communication. That's what this is supposed to be. This. I echoed. She walked around the island, closer now, her wine glass swinging lightly in her hand. You know, I think this could actually work. You and I, exploring. Comparing notes. Growing. Comparing notes, I repeated. Like it's a book club. She smiled, oblivious or pretending to be. Eli's interesting. Gentle. Thoughtful. We talked for hours. He asked me things you haven't asked in years. I let that one land. Let it dig in, then dissolve. I could have told her I'd spent the weekend with someone who didn't talk in riddles. Someone who didn't need a manifesto to justify her desire. But I said nothing. Instead, I nodded. Glad you're feeling alive. She watched me carefully. And you? Did you do anything this weekend? I shrugged. Yeah, a little wine. A lot of thinking. Alone. Her voice was sharp but coated in sugar. She was digging, but she wasn't ready for the truth. Not really. I gave her a half-smile. Would it matter? She stepped closer, close enough for me to smell her shampoo, something expensive and floral she only used when she was trying to impress. Her fingers trailed up my arm, slow, like she was testing me. We said we'd be honest, she murmured. I looked down at her hand, then back into her eyes. Okay, I said. I wasn't alone. Her breath caught. Just for a second. She masked it well, but I saw it, that flicker of ego cracking. She hadn't expected that. She thought she'd be the one exploring while I waited at home like a husband with a leash around his neck. With her hand still on my arm, she smiled again, but it didn't reach her eyes. I hope, whoever she is, treated you well. She did, I said. Very well. She stepped back. Good. That's good. I nodded. You should probably get dressed. She blinked. Why? Because I'm not in the mood for pretend intimacy tonight. Her eyes hardened. So this is how it's going to be? Scorekeeping. No, I said. This is me no longer lying to myself. She stared at me for a long time, lips parted like she wanted to say something brutal, but nothing came out. Eventually, she turned on her heel and walked upstairs. I didn't follow. I stayed in the kitchen, listening to the distant click of the bedroom door closing. The wreckage was quiet now, but that didn't mean the storm was over. It just meant we were past the eye. By Wednesday, everyone at the office knew something was different. They couldn't name it, exactly, not yet, but they could feel it. The way Chloe moved through the hallways with that slow, confident stride, her posture a little straighter, her voice more certain. She was no longer my quiet assistant with a quick smile and good instincts. She was sharp, present, alive. She wore a black pencil skirt and a fitted blouse that day, simple, elegant, unmistakably sexy without crossing any lines. But it wasn't the clothes that made people look twice. It was her presence. She was glowing, and I knew why. We hadn't spoken much since Napa. A few texts. A late-night call I ended before it could get emotional. She didn't push. She knew we were balancing on something fragile. But every time I looked at her across the office, we both knew exactly what had happened and what it meant. The Monday after our return, she'd passed me a folder in a morning meeting, her fingers brushing mine for a half-second longer than necessary. No one else noticed. But I did. And so did she. By midweek, I started hearing things. Chloe's on fire lately, one exec said as we passed in the hallway. Promotion material if I've ever seen it. She's different, another chimed in. More assertive. I smiled and nodded, offering nothing. Let them notice. Let them wonder. Because I was starting to notice, too. The way she took over calls before I asked. The way she anticipated meetings, speaking up with strategy instead of logistics. She was no longer just my assistant. She was evolving into something sharp-edged and indispensable. and maybe a little dangerous. By Thursday afternoon, she knocked on my office door like she owned the place. Got a minute? I nodded. Of course. She stepped in, closed the door behind her, and leaned against it, not aggressively, just with casual confidence that made the air shift. She didn't sit. She didn't fidget. She just stood there, watching me. You've barely said 2 words to me all week, she said. I've said more than that. I'm not counting texts, she said, or clipped hallway greetings. I sat back in my chair, arms folded, trying to keep things professional. You slept with me. I remember. She took a step forward. Then why are you pretending like nothing's changed? Because it can't change everything, I said. Not yet. She came closer, stopping on the other side of my desk. I'm not asking for everything. I'm not asking for anything, really. But I'm not going to pretend either. That weekend meant something. I met her eyes. It did. Her voice dropped. Then stop looking at me like you're afraid of what it meant. I stood slowly, stepping around the desk until we were inches apart. Her breath hitched just slightly. I could smell her perfume, subtle, warm, familiar now. I'm not afraid of it, I said. I'm protecting it. She nodded, her gaze softening. Okay, then protect it. But don't erase it. I didn't kiss her. Not in the office. Not here. But I wanted to. We were both still standing there, too close, too still, when the door opened. And there she was. My wife. Hair curled, blouse tight. That perfectly curated smirk stretched across her face like she'd been rehearsing it in the car. Hey, babe, she said, voice sugar-coated venom. Thought I'd surprise you for lunch. The silence that followed was pure glass. Chloe stepped back instinctively, her expression guarded but unreadable. My wife's eyes flicked between us. Once. Then again. And I watched her smile fracture, not completely, but enough for the mask to crack. Just for a second. She recovered quickly. Oh, she said, her tone bright and falsely casual. Didn't mean to interrupt anything. You didn't, I said evenly. Chloe nodded. I was just dropping off some paperwork. My wife stepped further into the room, her heels clicking like accusations. You look different, Chloe. New haircut? No, Chloe said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Just a new attitude. There it was. The tension curled in the room like a snake, quiet and coiled. Well, my wife said, looking at me now. You ready to eat? I grabbed my jacket, glanced once at Chloe, then followed my wife out the door. As it closed behind us, I felt her lean in closer than necessary. You've got glitter on your collar, she whispered. She said it like a joke, but her nails dug into my arm just a little too hard. Outside, the sun was bright and blinding. She didn't speak again until we reached the car. You really thought I wouldn't notice? I opened the door. Notice what? The way she looked at you. The way you looked at her. I said nothing. Was she your weekend? Still silent. She laughed, sharp and bitter. God, I really thought I'd get to be the adventurous one. And here you are, fucking your assistant like some bored CEO cliché. I turned to face her. You wanted honesty. That was your whole pitch. Radical communication, remember? Yeah, well, maybe I didn't think you had it in you, she snapped. I thought you'd sit home and brood while I explored. I thought I had time. Time. Like this was a race she'd planned to win. You don't know anything about Chloe, I said. She smirked. Oh, I know enough. I looked at her then. Really looked. And I realized something. She wasn't upset because I cheated. She was upset because I'd leveled the playing field. She no longer had control. And she knew it. We drove in silence the rest of the way. She didn't reach for my hand. I didn't offer mine. Inside the restaurant, we sat across from each other, two strangers clinging to the script of a marriage already slipping into fiction. She wore white. I think that was intentional. A crisp, sleeveless dress that hugged her waist and flared at the hips, innocent and radiant, the way a woman looks when she's trying to sell purity. Her hair was pinned just so, makeup flawless, her heels elegant enough to echo confidence with each step. She looked like a woman ready to win. She had no idea she was already losing. We sat at a table near the center of the restaurant. Classy place, linen tablecloths, candlelight, live piano murmuring in the corner. Our server hovered with wine suggestions while she made small talk and charmed him with the same laugh she used on Eli, no doubt. I let her have her moment. Let her think this was my olive branch. Let her think she still had the lead. This was a nice idea, she said as she studied the menu. Very romantic. Are we celebrating something? I smiled. Closure. She raised an eyebrow, amused. Oh, that sounds ominous. I didn't answer. We ordered. She chose seafood. I chose steak. She leaned forward once the waiter walked away, her expression softening, almost sincere. Listen, about the other day. Chloe. Her eyes flickered. She recovered quickly. Yes. I was surprised. But maybe I needed that. Maybe we both did. Oh, I agree. She paused, reading my tone. So, are we still doing this? The arrangement? Depends. On what? On how much truth you're really ready for. She sat back slowly, her smile wavering. I'm not sure what you mean. But she did. She always did. The wine came. The bread. Then silence. I reached into my jacket and slid a thin black folder across the table. She eyed it with suspicion, then curiosity. It wasn't thick. Just a few sheets. But sometimes that's all it takes to change everything. What's this? She asked, setting down her glass. Open it. She hesitated, then flipped the folder open. The first page was straightforward. Petition for divorce. Preliminary filing. The silence that followed could have drowned the music. She blinked. You're not serious. I didn't say anything. Just waited. She turned the page. Her eyes scanned the next sheet. Property division. No alimony. 50-50 custody proposal even though we didn't have children. A clean break. No, she said, laughing in disbelief. You're not doing this. You don't get to flip this now. You were fine with the idea. You played along. I didn't play, I said quietly. I studied. I watched. I waited. Her hands trembled slightly as she closed the folder. This is bullshit, she snapped. You're just trying to punish me. You told me this was about growth, I said. So I grew. Her mouth opened, a retort half formed, and then it died when the doors behind me opened and Chloe walked in. Perfect timing. She was radiant, confident, understated in a soft emerald dress that clung just enough to turn heads. Her heels clicked softly across the hardwood as she approached our table. My wife stared at her like a ghost had materialized. Chloe leaned down, kissed my cheek gently, then took the empty chair beside me. Sorry I'm late, she said, sliding her napkin onto her lap. The wine tasting ran long. My wife's face went slack. Her composure fractured in real time. You invited her? She asked, her voice sharp, brittle. I did. Her eyes darted to Chloe, then back to me. This is a joke. A fucking performance. No, I said, calm. This is me setting the table for the truth. She stood abruptly, the white dress catching in the candlelight. You think this makes you powerful? Filing papers in a restaurant? Parading your assistant in front of me like a trophy? She's not a trophy, I said. She's the one person in my life who didn't lie to me while pretending it was growth. That hit her hard. People were starting to glance over. Forks paused mid-air, quiet conversations dimming around us. You embarrassed me, she hissed, voice barely above a whisper. In public. Here. You embarrassed us months ago, I said. You just didn't have an audience. The server reappeared, eyes wide, awkwardly holding 2 plates. Everything okay here? He asked. Chloe smiled politely. Yes, thank you. We were just finishing something up. He nodded, placed the dishes, and vanished as fast as he came. My wife stared down at the divorce papers, then at me. I won't sign this. That's your right, I said. But it's happening, with or without your cooperation. I already filed. She blinked fast, twice, 3 times, then swallowed hard and walked away from the table. I watched her heels disappear through the main doors. And for the first time in years, I didn't follow. Chloe cut into her halibut and took a bite, unfazed. That went smoother than I expected, she said, chewing. I let out a slow breath. It's not over. She nodded. No, but it's yours now, not hers. For a long time, we ate in silence. Not the awkward kind. The kind where peace comes in measured breaths. Where war is over, even if the cleanup hasn't begun. The screaming started before the door had even fully shut. She'd beat me home. Of course she had. And the minute I stepped into the living room, it hit me like a wall of sound. You humiliated me. Her voice cracked, wild and raw, echoing off the hardwood floors and the vaulted ceiling I had once remodeled by hand. The folder I'd handed her at dinner was lying open on the coffee table, its pages crumpled, wine-stained. She must have taken it out of her purse and thrown it there in some manic rush of disbelief. Publicly, she snarled, stalking toward me, in front of a crowd. At our restaurant. Our restaurant, I asked, tossing my keys on the entry table. You mean the one you made plans to open our marriage over? She flinched like I'd slapped her. You brought her there. Chloe. Like she was your date. Like she was your girlfriend. I offered. She stared at me. Are you serious? Completely. She scoffed. This is pathetic. You're trying to win some imaginary war. There's no scoreboard, you idiot. You don't win a divorce. No, I said, stepping past her toward the stairs. But you can lose yourself in a marriage you didn't realize was already over. You think she cares about you? She called after me. You think she's not using this for her own gain? Her career? You're just a stepping stone. Another pathetic man who mistook lust for love. I stopped, turned slowly. You know the difference between her and you? I asked. She didn't lie to my face while fucking someone else behind my back. She didn't gaslight me with words like growth and evolved while deleting messages from her phone and showering 3 times a day. Her mouth opened. No words. You burn this down, I said, voice low. I just walked out before it collapsed on top of me. She moved then, fast, closing the distance, reaching out and grabbing my arm. Her grip was tight, desperate. Don't do this, she whispered. Please, don't throw this away. This? I echoed. What is this exactly? An arrangement where you get to explore and I get to pretend I'm okay with it. I made a mistake, she said quickly. I got excited. I thought I wanted something else. But it wasn't real. Eli wasn't real. He was just noise. I searched her face. It wasn't guilt I saw. It was fear. You lost control, I said. And now you're scared. I'm not scared, she said, letting go of my arm. I'm sorry. The words hung there like stale air. She stepped closer again, slower this time. Softer. I still love you, she said. Then her hand slid to my chest. And lower. I miss you, she whispered. Her lips brushed my neck. Her thigh pressed against mine. Her breath came hot against my skin, her fingers slipping beneath the hem of my shirt. Let me remind you, she said, pulling back just enough to look into my eyes. Of us. Of what we had. It wasn't just seduction. It was a plea. A final, desperate offer. I took her hand and gently pushed it away. I already remember, I said, and I don't need reminding. Something broke behind her eyes. She stepped back, swallowing her pride with visible difficulty. You're really leaving, she said, not asking. I nodded. The bags are already packed. Her breath caught. Where? Chloe's, I said simply. She almost laughed. So you're going to be that cliché? The boss and the assistant. I'd rather be a cliché than a coward. I walked past her, up the stairs, into the bedroom we used to share. 2 suitcases sat by the bed. I zipped the second one shut, grabbed my toothbrush, and took one last look at the room we'd designed together. The room where I used to believe we'd raise kids, grow old, die in each other's arms. That room was gone. The illusion shattered. She was waiting at the foot of the stairs when I came down. I was wrong, she said, voice quieter now. I thought you were weak. I paused at the door. And I thought you were mine, I said. I opened the door and walked out. The air was cool and quiet. My car was already running, headlights casting long shadows across the lawn. Chloe sat in the driver's seat, window down, waiting. She didn't ask questions when I slid in beside her. She just reached across, took my hand in hers, and held it. The house behind us faded into darkness. I didn't look back. It was the same vineyard. Same gravel driveway crunching beneath the tires. Same rows of vines stretching into the hills. Same wind carrying the scent of sun-warmed grapes and old wood. But it felt entirely different now. Because this time, she was beside me. Chloe leaned out the window as we pulled up, sunglasses perched on her head, blonde hair caught in the breeze. Deja vu, she said, smiling. I cut the engine. Almost feels like we never left. She turned to look at me. We didn't leave. We escaped. I couldn't help but smile. It had been 6 months since I walked out of that house. 6 months of lawyers and logistics. Of returned rings and real estate listings. 6 months of rebuilding my life one breath, one box, one coffee cup at a time. But through it all, Chloe never wavered. She didn't push. She didn't hover. She just stayed. Some nights we talked until 2 a.m., curled on the couch with takeout and tired hearts. Other nights, we didn't speak at all, just shared the quiet and the touch of hands that didn't ask questions. And slowly, something happened. Not just healing. Something new. I thought love was something you grew into. Something earned over years and rituals. But sometimes love shows up like breath after drowning, unexpected, desperate, precious. She was that breath. We stepped out of the car and walked the trail between the vines, the same one we'd wandered all those months ago, before anything had really happened. The same trail where she'd kissed me for the first time. I stopped near the clearing with the old bench beneath the olive tree. She gave me a sideways glance. You're stalling. Maybe. She folded her arms. I swear to God, if you're about to pull out another folder. No folders, I said. She raised an eyebrow. Then what? I reached into my jacket. She froze. Her lips parted, just slightly. I pulled out a small black box. Chloe didn't move. Her breath caught in her throat. You're not. I'm not proposing out of guilt, I interrupted, voice steady. Or loneliness. Or just because you were there when everything fell apart. Her eyes were locked on mine now, unblinking. I'm doing this because I never knew how empty I was until you started filling the spaces. I opened the box. Simple ring. No drama. Just a band, a stone, and a promise. I've spent most of my adult life pretending, I said. Pretending to be okay. Pretending I was enough. Pretending what I had was love. She took a trembling breath. But you never made me pretend. You saw the worst, and you didn't look away. And somewhere between those broken pieces, we found something real. Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't blink them away. You don't have to say yes today, I said. Or tomorrow. But I needed you to know, you weren't just a moment. You're the first honest chapter I've ever written. She knelt down beside me. Didn't take the box. Didn't say anything right away. Just kissed me. And in that kiss was everything. Forgiveness for the past. Faith in the future. When we finally pulled apart, she whispered, say it again. What? That I'm not just a moment? I smiled. You're everything after the moment. She took the ring. Not a word. Just slid it on her finger and looked at me like I was something sacred. The vineyard around us was still. The breeze gentle. The sky slowly dipping toward dusk, painting everything in warm gold. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was losing anything. I felt like I'd finally arrived. Not at an ending, but at the place where the real story begins.